with other countries for joint regulation of fisheries or rail transportation or the skies, we're basically sharing our sovereignty with that government and outsourcing some of what we give our elected officials.
As disturbing as some find SPP, there is legislation in the House introduced by Florida's Catherine Harris that closely resembles the goals of the partnership. Included in that bill is a section which calls for the securing of Mexico's southern border by the United States and Canada. Lou, that's not the border with the United States, that's the border they share with Belize and Guatemala.
The idea that the White House would respond that this is on their website, this involves intricate workings amongst the Commerce Department of this country and Canada and Mexico's, of course, a regional prosperity and security program. This is absolute ignorance. And the fact that we reported this, we should point out, when it was signed. But as we watch this thing progress, these working groups are continuing, they're intensifying. What in the world are these people thinking about?
Well, they say, look, these are a declaration and an outline of our priorities. And when I called them today, Lou, they said I was the first phone call they had received literally since the deal was first signed. So people are not paying attention, and they're letting them, in fact, get away with this.
Yeah, I was asked the other day about whether or not I really thought the American people had the stomach to stand up and stop this nonsense, this direction from a group of elites in absolute contravention of our law, of our Constitution, every national value. And I hope, I pray that I'm right when I said yes, that this is beyond belief.
Dick, let's pretend that you and I are hearing about this for the first time. We don't know anything about what Dobbs said. What does security and prosperity partnership sound like to you?
It sounds pretty good. It's good to know that our leaders are meeting to give us more security and prosperity.
But security and prosperity for whom?
What do you mean? For us, the people who elected them as our leaders.
Well, I'm sorry to disappoint you, but the SPP is not a plan to provide security and prosperity for the people. Just the opposite, in fact.
Do you mean to tell me that our government leaders are deceiving us?
Well, impossible though it may be to believe, our government leaders are indeed deceiving us.
Well, how deceptive can they be if Lou Dobbs talks about it?
You haven't seen anything about it on network television, radio, or the newspapers and magazines, have you?
Well, no.
No. Only on Lou Dobbs' show. And the only way to see him on television is if you have cable access.
Now, wait a minute. If our president made an agreement to end the United States as an independent country by merging it with Canada and Mexico, that's major news. What a scoop that would be. How can NBC, CBS, and ABC News have missed it?
They didn't miss it, Dick. They are ignoring it.
Don't tell me. Even Fox News?
Especially Fox News.
Fox News? I'm flabbergasted. Why?
Dick, aren't you being just a little facetious?
Who, me? Facetious? Never.
Well, we're going to explain why in this video.
Why I'm facetious?
No, why you won't see this in the news. To understand how we are being deceived about the North American Union, we need to look at so-called free trade agreements, such as NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, because NAFTA laid the foundation for the North American Union. At the Bilderberg meeting in 1991, David Rockefeller told the virtually unknown governor of Arkansas, Bill Clinton, why NAFTA was a priority and that the Bilderbergers wanted him to support it. Clinton had already been anointed as the next American president, so as soon as he left the meeting, he went to Moscow. Why? Well, in the words of investigator Daniel Estulin,
it appears that President Clinton was sent by the Bilderbergers directly to Moscow to get his KGB student-era anti-Vietnam War files buried before he announced his candidacy for the U.S. presidency, which occurred some 2.5 months later.
So Bill Clinton's past had to be sanitized to help make him more palatable to the electorate, so he could then become their president and further implement the Bilderbergers' agenda. Less than a year after being sworn into office, President Clinton signed NAFTA into law in 1993, binding our government to NAFTA's regulations.
In the October 1st, 1993 Wall Street Journal, David Rockefeller said, "Grasping the moment means, first of all, winning the support of the American people, the administration, and Congress for NAFTA. Everything is in place after 500 years to build a true new world in the Western Hemisphere."
Notice that Rockefeller said winning support for NAFTA is first. What he has in mind for second is for the United States to give up its sovereignty, Constitution, and Bill of Rights to build his true new world. Now, who elected him to determine our national destiny? What authority does he have, Dick?
Rick, NAFTA's governing body is a commission of cabinet-level appointees from each country. The commission is implemented by a secretariat consisting of commission appointees.
So the people who run NAFTA are appointed by bureaucrats, not elected by constituents. Thus, they are unaccountable to the American people.
This is intentional, and in fact is a pervasive strategy of the globalists.
And that strategy, Dick, is the removal of elected, representative, accountable government and the substitution of unelected, unrepresentative, unaccountable government. Government by selection, not election. Exactly what is happening in the European Union. This is a direct violation of the American system of government, whose backbone was clearly expressed in the Declaration of Independence.
Governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed.
At the time he signed it into law, President Clinton said that NAFTA would create 200,000 U.S. jobs in its first 2 years, 1 million jobs in its first 5 years, $100 billion trade surpluses with Mexico by 2005.
With all these supposedly very smart people having made such glowing predictions, let's see how they've turned out. Dick, why don't you show us NAFTA's report card?
More than 1 million jobs, mostly in higher-wage manufacturing industries, were lost due to NAFTA, as companies moved plants and jobs to Mexico. Far more than 1 million jobs were lost internally, as illegal aliens from Mexico increasingly replaced American workers here in the United States. The United States has accumulated current account deficits of almost $400 billion with Mexico since the birth of NAFTA. Countless U.S. factories have been closed and rebuilt in Mexico. The U.S. manufacturing base has shrunk dramatically, and our nation is becoming a mere service provider. The southern border of the United States remains wide open, and federal government promises to close it are not being fulfilled, and the government has no intention of ever doing so. I repeat, the government has never had any intention of protecting the border.
Rulings from NAFTA's judicial panels have superseded state and federal court decisions. After a NAFTA tribunal overturned a Massachusetts Supreme Court decision in April 2004, Chief Justice Ronald George of the California Supreme Court commented, quote, "There are grave implications here. It's rather shocking that the highest courts of the state and federal governments could have their judgments circumvented by these tribunals." Close quote. NAFTA established a legal foundation for the integration of the U.S., Canada, and Mexico via the Security and Prosperity Partnership North American Union. These two initiatives are steps toward duplicating for the entire Western Hemisphere the centralized government system already compromising the independence of the nations of the European Union.
This is exactly the opposite of what NAFTA advocates predicted would happen.
Dick, if NAFTA were truly about free trade, its legislative text shouldn't have run more than a couple of pages. But the NAFTA agreement that Clinton signed into law was 1,700 pages.
It makes you wonder what the other 1,698 pages are for.
They are for transferring the power to regulate trade over to regional bureaucracies outside the authority of Congress. NAFTA and all the other so-called free trade agreements are not at all about free trade, but about managed trade. These agreements take powers away from the nation states and give them to unelected, unaccountable bureaucrats.
all under the masquerade of promoting free trade as a benefit.
So, NAFTA has been either a spectacular failure
or a spectacular success.